going on, everybody? It's Geoff Grammer with the Albuquerque Journal, joined by Sean Reider, who is, where are you at? You at the office now?
I am in the office today, yeah.
You actually go to the office. I sit here and camp out, hide out when I can in my house. So, anyway, let's talk. We haven't done this did we do one last week? I guess we did, right? At the beginning of the week, maybe?
Did we? I think it was the week before.
Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah.
Let's catch up a little bit, though, on all things Lobo football and basketball. And let's start off with just in general, I guess sort of where are we at is at the end of January right now. Anything to update on Lobo football?
They're very much still in the recruiting phase. I don't know how much of that at this point is focused on the portal. I don't think a lot is at the moment. But you're seeing a ton of prep recruiting updates in terms of guys being on the road. They were on the road all last week. I believe they're all on the road this week too. And I think that's going to be the status quo for a hot minute here too. Hitting, Arizona, California, Washington, Texas, places they recruited before to Idaho under Jason Eck and places they're wanting to branch into too. They got I believe two prep recruits yesterday. No, I think one was this morning. The one was yesterday. Thomas James Pettis, who's a local kid, linebacker from Volcano Vista, secured that commitment as well. And then let me double check the name, make sure I'm saying it right. Darian Bowers, a running back from Arlington, Texas, Bowie High School, if you're familiar with that area. And then another transfer commit in John Johnson, not to be mistaken for their running backs coach, John Johnson, but a cornerback from Montana State via the portal. So very much still in the kind of player acquisition mode at this point.
I get you could never have too many of these, but am I wrong to say it seems like they've landed a bunch of running backs already?
A ton of running backs, yeah, and the big one from last week, Scott Trey Humphrey, who Lobo fans, who if you're watching this show, you probably remember, ran for $140 on UNM on August 26 in Montana State's thrilling for me, if you're kind of an impartial observer. If you're a Lobo fan, probably not that much fun to watch. Come from behind win. He had the game-winning touchdown, I think 3 yards out, to put Montana State up ahead for good. I think I wrote that in a story and said that's probably the most significant transfer addition in some time for UNM, and I think I'll still stand by that. He was being pursued by North Carolina with obviously Billy B running the show over there now, Ole Miss, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, and New Mexico kind of had a little bit of a coup. Pulled out a guy that was, yes, an FCS running back, yes, a Big Sky running back, but a guy that's really talented, a lot of power, a lot of speed. Again, some of you were able to see it up close and in person, and pretty remarkable. And he's kind of filling out a room with Damon Bankston, 1,000-yard rusher at Weber State, Deshaun Buchanan, who was the leading rusher at Idaho last year, and then DJ McKinney, who's a Sam Houston State transfer, who was the Conference USA Freshman of the Year. So I don't know exactly who you give kudos to and all that, but if you were to give kudos to somebody, I would probably give it to running backs coach John Johnson, because they have done some pretty remarkable work so far.
I am a little bit curious, too. Do we know yet? Is it safe to assume at this level that anybody, especially in the transfer portal, I think it's probably safe, but prep recruits that might come in as a running back, do we know that if any of them for sure are going to stay as running back or some of these guys potential, something else, defensive back, safety, defensive end, just position changes? Any of those guys that were like listed as a running back that were also just prep athlete or anything like that?
I don't know for sure at this point. I don't really have a great feel for that, and I haven't really talked to anybody on the staff in terms of how they view that, because some staffs do it a little bit differently. Even this last staff was honestly a bit more fluid in terms of doing that. You had some guys kind of switching from, and not a ton, but a couple, switching from one position in spring ball, haven't really settled, but you're kind of get some work there, and then even midway through the season they switch back to something different. So I couldn't tell you for sure at that point, but that is a really good question.
I imagine when you're in the transfer portal, there's not a whole lot of people that hop in the portal and pick their next destination only to then get changed. So I'm guessing the transfers are all running backs, but I am curious about the high school kids. For Albuquerque people, for anybody, high school kids often go as one position and end up playing something else. It happens quite a bit for prep athletes. And the big example that happened that upset some Albuquerque people was Zach Gentry, who was a quarterback, and some people swore he was going to be a great college and one-day pro quarterback, and he switched year one over to tight end and made the NFL. Hard to argue with that. I do know that there are some who still really believe he should have stuck at quarterback and been given a chance at quarterback. I am in disagreement with that. I think Zach Gentry ended up when you end up making the NFL at a position out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, there's a good chance it was probably probably worked out well for you. Like the
quarterback to tight end to me too is very much like I think that's out of all the position changes, I think that is kind of a compliment in some ways. Like, all right, you may be lower down on the quarterback depth chart, but like you've shown you're smart enough to play tight end and you're athletic enough to play tight end, as opposed to, I think Narduzzi at Pitt, his philosophy was always like, we really just want to recruit a ton of defensive linemen. If we don't like them as defensive linemen, we'll make them offensive linemen. And we might switch them back and forth. And it's just kind of a whole muddled process.
Right. Other stuff going on related to Lobo football and Lobo athletics in general. I will, I guess, just sort of update for anybody that doesn't know. Yesterday, Dave Williams announced it had been in the works for a little while, I guess. But he announced he is stepping down. This is his last week. His last day will be Friday, and he is assuming the senior deputy athletic director position at the University of Houston. So he'll reunite with Eddie Nunez. And the reason I bring this up now as we're talking football is Dave Williams was in every single meeting and every single lunch, every single dinner, on every single private flight. In fact, he was on some that Eddie Nunez wasn't because Eddie had other obligations for the Bronco Mendenhall hire, and same deal with Fernando Lobo with the Jason Eck hire and other interviews. David Williams was as much in that, in some ways, sometimes probably a little bit more involved because the athletic director has other obligations, but he was very much involved in both the two recent football hires and searches, as well as the Lobo basketball with Richard Pitino. And Dave Williams for 6 years was the number two guy at UNM Athletics. The last 6 months was really the interim, was the number one guy, and did apply for the job, and it went to Fernando Lobo. I would have guessed had you asked me before the hiring of Fernando Lobo, or even up until a week or two after, if Dave Williams was leaving and going to end up at Houston, I would have said, yeah, absolutely. Then why wouldn't he? And then a couple weeks after Fernando Lobo was hired, I kind of realized that, Dave's actually handling this pretty well. He obviously has family issues, not family issues, family ties to Albuquerque and to UNM. His wife's a professor at UNM, or teaches at UNM. His youngest son is a freshman enrolled at UNM. He has a son who's a lawyer in town and a daughter who's a teacher in town. So was not the slam dunk to leave UNM that I would have originally assumed it was. But in the end, Dave Williams is reuniting with Eddie Nunez at the University of Houston, and that is a lot of institutional knowledge that has left the building at UNM Athletics in the last 6-7 months between Eddie, Dave, Ryan Berryman. There are now 3 openings at the Lobo Club. It's been a lot of people move on to bigger and better things. None of it was a firing or I'm not good at this, or I hate this, or I'm sick of this place kind of thing, and just get out. They were all moving on to bigger and better things. So there are a lot of openings though at UNM Athletics, and Dave Williams is the most recent one.
And I think I'll ask you this kind of question too, and given your feel for the athletic department and how things function as well too, what do you think will happen with this kind of deputy AD role and some of the other openings at this point? Can we expect maybe people to be promoted to certain roles, or will it all be outside, or what do you kind of feel there?
Yeah, so I'm going to write later this week about this. I talked with Fernando at length yesterday about this, and it's interesting, right? We all know, we've talked about it here, and everybody who's a college sports fans knows that this college athletics world, as we speak right now, January 28th, 2025, isn't even what it was in March of last year, or 2 years ago, or 18 months ago. Things changed so much between NIL, the house settlement, how you handle things like that, how you handle collectives. Things change and evolve so much, and athletic departments, for a lot of reasons, and at UNM, because of loyalty, because people were good at their job, all that kind of stuff, they'd stayed in their positions for so long. It's kind of hard to just sort of, restructure things and really adapt sometimes to all those changes unless it's forced. Ideally, you're not going to have this many openings and this much loss of institutional knowledge in a 6-7 month period like this. But it does provide Fernando a really unique, really challenging opportunity right off the bat as the new AD to structure an executive team that is exactly what he wants, not kind of what he wants, but really exactly what he wants. He can, if he doesn't want a number two, a senior deputy athletic director who is, his right hand on everything. He can have multiple people at a little lower position or a different position. If you don't want one person handling all the marketing and ticketing and external affairs like Dave Williams was, and you want somebody only focused on NIL and fundraising or the house settlement and revenue sharing and what that's going to mean, you can do all that. So to answer your question, will there be promotions from within, all that kind of stuff? Yes, I think there will be some restructuring and new positions out of all this and promotions and probably a little bit of pay raise for some people. I think that's going to happen with some people, but I also think that it's not in 6 months going to look like if you go to the staff directory and just look at whoever senior associate athletic director is by title and position. I don't think what it was 6 months ago is what it's going to look like 6 months from now. And I think it is a unique opportunity for Fernando to really tackle what's happening right now in college athletics that some other athletic departments just can't do. You can't always just restructure in the middle of everything. So, I think Fernando's going to hire at least one very important piece that's going to have to come from the outside. But I think some of the top positions there are going to be internal, and but maybe not what they're doing right now.
What do you think in terms of, I'm certain you're going to write about this too as well, but I mean, you mentioned that obviously the rampant change in college athletics. We deal with it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis too. But in terms of Fernando's priorities going forward, in terms of what needs to be addressed in terms of staffing within the athletic department, where do you see him kind of taking that?
I think Fernando, from talking to him just, again, less than 24 hours ago, he told me that like the house settlement right now is the number one priority to understand how to handle. And for those that don't know, when just loosely called the house settlement, that is the catch-all phrase for a lot of change that's about to happen because of revenue sharing. What does that mean? Does a place like New Mexico really have enough money to pay athletes the millions of dollars collectively, not individually, that the power conferences are? Can New Mexico in any way compete with revenue sharing? When you call it revenue sharing, New Mexico's not making the revenue that those conferences are. Group of five, if you will, or whatever, non-power conferences, they're not making the same kind of revenue. So to be competitive, you can't really just put a percentage on it and say, we'll give the athletes 5% of our revenue. That's not going to help competition ever for a place that isn't a Texas, where Fernando Lobo came from, an Ohio State, just one, the big dogs that are making hundreds of millions every year. So what does all that mean? Do you need one person focused on that / NIL and collectives and all that? One person really looking at just paying of the athletes now? Probably. And that is not a position that exists right now in athletic departments. It is something that we've talked about with coaching staffs in terms of like, hey, do you want a general manager at the college level? Patino's been asked it. Do you want a general manager? As of right now, he doesn't, but he understands that might change. They're collectively doing it as a staff. But football teams they have directors of operations, they have other positions, but general managers for college teams is probably about to happen. And an athletic department as a entire unit probably needs somebody that focuses just on the revenue share and just on how players get paid. So I think that's going to be something that Fernando has to focus on, is how UNM positions itself in this changing landscape of college athletics in the house era and with revenue share. And of course they have the other stuff. They're about to be a new conference, maybe the same name, but they're going on, a year and a half from now, going to be a new conference. Well, what does that mean? Do they need to add more teams still? What do they need to do to position themselves to not be left behind again if something comes up in 2 years? So Fernando has a lot on his plate, but I would say right now getting that executive team together in the next month or two is got to be priority number one. And then he can start focusing on some of that bigger stuff himself. But right now, he just needs to figure out what he wants his executive team to look like.
Pretty fascinating period for him to step in as a first-time AD, and in the micro sense where it's, hey, you just got hired, go find us a football coach, and then, hey, the macro sense, you just got hired. Please chart these incredibly unnavigated waters for us. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Fernando, Dave Williams was in a unique position, right? Applied for the job, didn't get it, and he and Fernando. He could have left right away if he wanted to, but he stayed. He wanted to, as he told me, he believed that it was a good idea and something he wanted to do to help Fernando in every way, kind of have a good foundation to start with, right? And that included right off the bat having to hire a football coach. Like his first week on the job, Bronco's gone, and what do you do? Well, without Dave Williams there helping him, that would have been really tough. I mean, it's easy enough to say, okay, an athletic director knows how to hire, whether he just got on the job or not. Well, no, you need to know who to call at UNM, who to say, yes, this we can offer. No, at UNM, you can't do that. Like there are some things that you need somebody who has, keys to the office at UNM. Fernando didn't even have a key yet. He didn't even have his ID. So Dave stayed to help with that, wanted to. It was important to him. And on the other side, Fernando said, look, he had no obligation to do any of that. But I'm very indebted, Fernando told me. I'm very indebted to Dave Williams, and he has my respect because he was a pro's pro in the transition, and he's very indebted to Dave Williams. So I thought that was very cool that Fernando made it a point to really emphasize that, and that Dave Williams made it a point to say he wanted that. He wanted to give Fernando a fair shake and a fair start. I will start pulling in some of these comments now. Joey T on X, how much does the change in AD affect the coaches and their future and loyalty? I'd say on one hand, a lot. It can, right? ADs and coaches have to be aligned. Pitino had specifically written into his contract, if Eddie Nunez left, his buyout was reduced by 50% within 12 months. So whatever his buyout is right now, I can't even remember what it is right now. It's 50% less for basically, I think, 6 months after Eddie left. So, or a year maybe. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, it was written in there. If the AD leaves, then it's easier for me to leave, and that'll be something that UNM basketball is going to face this offseason. Is Pitino's going to get offers again? Pitino.
I was gonna say, you better brush up on that buyout number, considering the stir you made on social media by saying he was leaving and for sure gone this offseason.
Yeah, I've talked to Pitino and Fernando both about that, and I don't back off anything I said. I was asked if I think he's leaving. To be honest with you, I think he'll probably leave because I think they're going to have a good season. I don't say that based on he has told me I'm leaving. I say that based on what I think is about to happen in the next month is that the Lobos will make another NCAA tournament. And if they make another NCAA tournament, I think Richard Pitino will be offered money that UNM can't match. But UNM is going to try. UNM is going to put together something to try and keep Pitino here. And I 100% believe that Richard Pitino isn't going to take a job for just more money. He doesn't want another Minnesota situation. He wants a good job in a conference. But this isn't the conference he signed up for. Man, the Mountain West, it's depressing to Lobo fans and Mountain West fans. The Mountain West is about to be a conference that is not what it is now. And that's unfortunate for everybody involved, and UNM got left behind. But that is not what Pitino signed up for. It wasn't what Bronco Mendenhall signed up for. And that is a part of all this. As much as anybody wants to say, but he has great fans. You can, don't mess with Happy. Look what happened to Steve Alford. None of that stuff really applies when the conference is about to be very challenged to get more than 2 bids ever moving forward. And the power structure of the Power Four and everybody else is about to separate even more. This is that's part of Fernando's challenge, right? With the new landscape of college athletics, is things are separating even more. And it's part of the challenge with all this.
They've been playing pretty good basketball as of late. I don't think it's enough to save Ben Johnson in the end, but in January I was kind of warming up the bus mentally on would Richard Pitino return to Minnesota perhaps, purely as a joke, but good little winning streak for the Gophers though.
Yeah, they put together, is it 4 in a row now?
I think it's 4 in a row. Beat Oregon, Michigan, and there's another one in there. I'm blanking on Iowa. So 3 in a row. They play the first place Michigan State Spartans today too. Number 7 team in the country, by the way.
I dropped them a spot this week. I can't remember
You
who
did? What? Why?
I had Tennessee.
They didn't play great. They didn't play great against Rutgers.
Yeah, I had Tennessee below them. And even though Tennessee lost, I got more out of Tennessee this week, and I think I put them back because I think I regretted dropping Tennessee a spot too low last week. So I have Tennessee ahead of them. I think that was the flip flop that I did.
You want to talk Big Ten basketball? That was what Auburn, Tennessee was. My God.
Big Ten wishes it could be SEC basketball.
That was Big Ten basketball right there, man. That was something.
All right. Adam's asking, is it a similar role at Houston or a promotion? Also, good to see y'all. Adam, thank you for being here. It is very much a similar role. It will be Eddie Nunez's right hand, his second in command, helping him with everything external affairs primarily. That means navigating things like if they have to do a new multimedia marketing package, their website company, the ticketing company. Dave oversaw all of that, like the companies they partner with for all that kind of stuff. Dave oversaw all of that. And so, yeah, it'll be very similar, and it'll be in the Big 12, and it'll be for a pay raise. I don't know how much he's getting paid. I do know here with the interim tag and all that kind of stuff, I think he was at 217, 215. I think his contract as deputy athletic director was at 175, but then when he got the interim, it bumped up to 215 maybe is what it was. But anyway, he is leaving here just north of $200,000 a year annually. And that's a pretty good pay in the Mountain West for the non-athletic director. He's leaving for a lot more money though. So good for him. I'm happy for him too. And Dave Williams was a guy, you may be watching. I'll say this, when he first got here, and he's been here 6 years, I think he got, I don't want to say a bad rap, but I think the opinion of the Dave Williams, Eddie Nunez partnership for a while was good cop, bad cop. I think Eddie was the guy shaking everybody's hands, trying to rebuild the culture, while Dave Williams maybe came in and did some of the, some dirty work, I guess, maybe. I know with Paul Weir, there was a lot of discipline matters with some players there for a while. There were some issues that Dave Williams got really involved in handling and kind of having to be a little bit of the iron fist that Eddie, not that Eddie wasn't, the decisions were all hand in hand, but I think Dave Williams kind of had to be the hard ass sometimes. And the good cop, bad cop, I think did rub some people wrong for a while. I remember I thought, they were being a little harsh on the basketball program there for a little while there were some player issues going on. And I thought Dave handled a lot of that. So I thought that early on, Dave was sort of the bad cop to Eddie Nunez's good cop. And I think by the end, Dave Williams and I were right now, I think a really good working relationship. And I think he's an asset that UNM's really going to miss.
Yeah, and you mentioned, while Eddie was out and about resetting the culture, I mean, you could honestly say what Dave was doing right then and there in that early stage was absolutely just as important in terms of setting the culture. And you saw it firsthand. I didn't. Yeah.
I mean, Eddie Nunez there's been two people in Mountain West history that got the Commissioner's Award or whatever it's called. And Eddie was one of them for how he navigated UNM athletics through COVID. And Eddie said all the right things and all that, and he was the guy in charge. But it was a team effort. It was a group effort, and Dave and other guys too. Ed Manzanares and Ryan Berryman and Amy Began and just a lot of people had a hand in it. Frank Mercogliano and all the people who've been there a long time who kind of had to handle their business in a new world of COVID. We're all a part of that, but Eddie got the big award for it, but Dave was integral in all that too. So they're going to miss him for sure. This is an athletic department that right now is fundraising at a record pace, and Jalen Dominguez is doing great things at the Lobo Club. His job has already changed in the past 6 months since Eddie left, and I imagine his job is going to change again shortly with Fernando Lobo making some of these changes. But fundraising at a place like UNM is more important than ever. So the fact that their trajectory is up and they're setting records in fundraising, that's a good sign. But they also now have some openings, including two major gift sort of openings. I think annual giving and major gift giving roles are both open at the Lobo Club right now. So they better fill those with some people that can make some money for them to keep up. Let's see. Adam Garcia is asking on YouTube. So you're telling me even the punters getting NIL?
Hey, punters should get good punters should get NIL.
Punters are people too, Adam.
Is very important. Very important.
Punters are people too, Adam.
But yeah, basically, I mean.
What's up, Geoff? Jeffrey Holland is on YouTube asking or saying, with men's basketball stable again, is the focus going to be on bringing in somebody with strong ties and connections to football, along with experience to complement Lobo? Yes and no. I would say that the priority, with Lobo having such a football background, the priority might just be on somebody who can handle either really specifically onto fundraising or somebody you think can kind of just be so versatile because everything's changing so much. You might even need somebody with like somewhat of a legal background and compliance background, frankly, to handle all this NIL and revenue sharing stuff, because it's going to get messy for a while. I think players are about to start getting paychecks drawn to them on a university check, University of New Mexico check, and there are going to be some issues with the revenue sharing and the NIL and how to handle all that. Man, I think compliance officers, Amy Began being the top compliance officer now at UNM, like compliance in the next couple of years is going to be as much a headache as it's ever been. I mean, it's been a headache for a little while in college athletics, but I think that could be it too. I think so. My point is, I think with Fernando having a football background, maybe he doesn't lean on another football person. Maybe he tries to find somebody that he doesn't have the experience. You have any thoughts on what they might go for in terms of like ideal candidate to bring in?
I think I exactly agree. And I honestly really would agree with you in terms of hammering the compliance background. That seems like it's always been important to have good compliance people in your athletic department. Now more than ever, it seems especially important. And the legal background element too, actually. But I don't think you can think of it anymore in the sense of just, oh, well, he's a basketball guy, or he's a football guy, and you can take care of that. It's going to be a bit more involved in that in terms of the nitty gritty and all that.
Box Gaming on YouTube is saying, yeah, I think conference realignment is going to be the key reason that's when I was talking Patino, and some players decide to leave as well. It will be a part of it. It just will be. Now, that said, a lot of people have a crazy notion that UNM can be the next Gonzaga. I don't think it can be. Gonzaga's private fundraising is something I don't think people have any understanding of. It is not something that can happen in New Mexico. But let's just say, let's keep that mindset. Let's keep that energy going. If you want to be the next Gonzaga, well, then maybe it's okay to not be in a power conference. Maybe you just really, really dominate your conference. I would add to that, though, New Mexico State sure did that in the WAC for a long time, and they never once got an at-large worthy seed or season out of it. So while they won the WAC tournament every year, not once did they ever have a seed that would have been an at-large seed. And that shows you it's really, really hard to do what Gonzaga did out of the West Coast Conference for so long. You need a pretty powerful conference to in basketball to be relevant.
On the note of conference realignment being a reason for players to decide to leave as well. I've done this for 2 seasons. I've seen multiple different waves of conference realignment, and I've always asked players, do you pay attention to that? Do you care about that? I've asked coaches too. Danny Gonzalez admitted that he actually loves following conference realignment. He just finds it really interesting. Bronco had more Bronco approach, as you can probably imagine, in terms of talking about it, but gave good answers. I don't think I ever talked to a single player that said, yeah, I follow that or I care about that. It's just not, I don't really care whatever happens. Do you kind of get a read in terms of, they're all the same age essentially, but in terms of basketball players, do you think that would factor into a decision?
No, I think it really comes down to the, when the door opens in the recruiting process, your handlers or your high school coaches or your AAU coaches, probably more specifically, they may guide you at the very beginning part, but I don't think the players themselves care nearly as much. I think they get enamored with the pit and the crowd, and they like those kind of things. But if they have NBA hopes, they also know they need to get some attention from scouts, and you do that in general from playing in bigger profile games. They'll find you if you're really, really good. But if you're maybe marginal, how do they find you? Sometimes it's because they were there to see someone else, and you just don't see they were there to see someone else a whole lot in lower level conferences. So I don't think the players follow it that much, but I think the starting process in recruiting might affect that some, where the handlers sort of direct lower conference schools this way and power conference schools this way. I'm going to hit you with some football ones here, Sean. This is from earlier from Juan on YouTube. What up, dog? Sean, do you know anything? I'll just leave it at that. Do you know anything? Do you know anything on high school recruit named Jay Martassi? Is what I'm going to say. Martassi. I saw a post of him in uniform on a visit, but I don't know if he committed.
So it's actually Jamar Tazi. Like Jamar is one word and then Tazi. I really don't know. Last I checked, I wasn't aware that he was frankly on a visit out here. I know he was an Idaho commit, and he committed right before Eck left for New Mexico. I believe he's Roosevelt High School, which I think is in Washington. D lineman, I think I already said that, but I'll re-say it again. So I couldn't tell you for sure. I can look up the information on that and see if he committed. I'd like to think at this point, my algorithm on like Twitter and all that is kind of like perfect in the sense of, I'm going to see every bit of recruiting news in one way or the other. And I haven't seen anything from Jamar quite yet, but if he was on a visit, then certainly something to look for too, because he already committed Eck once. So something to monitor. Good question, Juan.
Got another one for you from Juan. Also, did Juwan Singletary withdraw from the transfer portal? And is Tevin Shaw still on the roster?
I think Shaw is still on the roster. Pencil me in at like 85% confidence on that. I don't remember off the top of my head a Tevin Shaw, I'm withdrawing from the portal post or anything like that. And I can check in a second here, honestly. But I think he still is. Juwan Singletary, I don't know. And honestly, at some point during the season, it was brought to my attention that Juwan might not have even eligibility left, and he's still in the portal. But I don't remember Juwan's background enough to say how much the whole Pavia deal might change the situation, because he was at Grambling, but I don't know if he's at JUCO before that. So if we want to run a couple questions and circle back to this, I'll see what I can pull on this one. But good questions. But to sum it up, I think Tevin is still on the roster. Juwan, I don't know for sure.
I will say the the Diego Pavia situation.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
So
I'll say the Diego Pavia is another mix or mess that compliance offices are going to have to figure out.
Yeah, and I haven't really talked about it on shows before too. Like people have asked about Andrew Henry, right? Because Andrew Henry, the running back for UNM, did not play in the first 3-4 games this season and was ruled ineligible at some point. But after the third or the fourth game, I don't remember which one exactly. He did play, but he wasn't playing like a major role. I think he had one carry in all those games. He did some special teams and all that, but it wasn't quite the role that people would have imagined in that running back room. And then he was ruled ineligible because of an issue with his tracker from 2 previous junior colleges that he was at, and some kind of miscommunication there. And that effectively was supposed to end his college career. Then the Pavia ruling came out, and I saw a lot of people were kind of latching on and saying, well, he'll probably have another year because it's junior college stuff. I don't believe it applies to him, though, because in order for you to get that extra year or so of eligibility from if you played junior, JUCO or whatever, your eligibility clock had to start running in 2020. His started running in 2019. So until somebody says to me they worked it out and he's for sure going to be on the roster, I don't think he'll be playing at UNM this season. Singletary, I don't know when his eligibility started, but he was at Navarro College, which is a junior college, I believe, in Texas. So we'll kind of see what happens there, and if he is in fact coming back to UNM.
All right, I'm going to drop in a couple others here. Let's drop this with Adam. Adam, I've heard a lot of national media suggest the commissioner for college athletics try and rein some of this in. Do you think that's beneficial, or what would it look like? I 100% think it's got to happen where football breaks off. And I think Mick Cronin, if you're not even getting through the first 5 games of Big Ten play, and
We've
Mick
seen the
Cronin,
Statue of Liberty twice.
we've seen this. Yeah, Mick Cronin's making the point very publicly and very whiny, but making the point that is going to be
one of those games he scheduled in the non-conference. Like,
yeah, but he's the point being like this isn't sustainable to keep sending teams from Washington and LA and all these teams from the West going east is going to start affecting performance and outcome, and people are going to be like, wait a minute, this isn't sustainable for that reason, but let alone just the cost and the strain on the students and all that kind of stuff. It's real, man. It's real. They don't all charter. And even if they do charter, 5-hour flights sometimes suck. Like even in a charter, and you do that all the time, it really sucks. So at least I wouldn't know, but I think they still can suck. But I just don't think it's going to work, man. Like at some point, football has to break off. And again, you're not even close to that. He wasn't even close to the halfway point of the first season in Big Ten basketball.
Not even a quarter of the way through. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mick Cronin's already saying, what are we like? This is not going to work. And he's absolutely right. Came across like a whiny, poor little millionaire that, we all should feel sorry for. But now I say all that to your question, Adam, because somebody has to oversee all this and basically figure out how to break football away from everything else and not have it basically break a whole lot of multimedia right contracts across the country. There's a lot of legal obligations. There's a lot of reasons that football can't just break away. It's not as easy as that. Some schools don't want that to happen anyway, but it's going to have to happen. Just absolutely has to. And a commissioner overseeing that sure would be helpful, I think.
Adam, I think you've also seen people. They're not even just a commissioner for college sports as a whole, but just a commissioner for college football. I feel like I've seen a lot of coaches clamor for that in particular, and everybody likes to nominate Saban and Chris Peterson, really respected guys like that. And I don't know. I mean, like, do you think do you honestly, to kind of actually answer the question, do you think a commissioner for college athletics as a whole is legitimately beneficial, or can we just figure out a way to break it off? And
a commissioner probably not for the whole, in my opinion. A commissioner for football. It's big business, man. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. Let it be run like a business. Everyone's getting paid now, which is the right thing. But let it be run like a business a little bit more, and put someone in charge of it. Along those lines, my nominee right now for commissioner is
Richie. There he is.
KRQE podcast did an episode on the Lobos and credited me for suggesting the Lobos on there. Good job. KRQE didn't know the Lobos were around. They've covered them, I think. But yeah, I haven't listened to KRQE's podcast on them. I will do so. I am interested in that. Was it Richie? Was it Van and Jared Chester? And was it the sports team or was it their podcast team? They have 2 reporters. Gabriel Burkhardt, I think, is one of them. Anyway, was it them doing it or was it the sports team that did the podcast of some kind? I'll look it up and find out, but I'm just curious what they were talking about. If their topic was the Lobos, are we talking football, basketball, athletics? What?
Richie, good to hear from you.
All right. Can you see him out the window? I mean,
I literally, I'm looking at him right now. He's on his laptop.
Matthew Narvaez is asking, "Hi guys."
He's laughing, yeah. So he's definitely listening right now. Okay, yeah.
Cowboy fan. I'm just glad he's in good spirits as a Cowboy.
That was my first thing today. I was really excited when I walked in the office today and I saw Matt, and I just immediately got to wander up and say, "Dude, Schottenheimer, man!" Like,
is he excited? I'm glad that they're going to get over the so-called drought or whatever. I don't think is it Steve? What's Jerry Jones' son's name? What's Jones?
Stephen Jones. Stephen Jones.
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't think Stephen Jones knows what air quotes are. It's not a supposed drought, a championship drought. Like, it is a championship drought. I don't think he knows what air quotes mean. But anyway, and to do that in a press conference is sort of weird. That's not the question. The question is, Sean, can you ask how the football team can get their hands on state-themed jerseys like men's basketball?
You might be a better person to talk to on this kind of note too.
Yeah.
In terms of you actually know the basketball process and some like the Zia stuff too, and what you kind of need.
Yeah.
To
So
get
Ryan Berryman, the guy who's now working at Washington, but a former student manager, worked his way up as a student regent and then into the administration of UNM athletics. He was the one that really spearheaded it for the Lobos and got the state flag themed Zia symbol ones, and it was really important to him and to UNM. There's not a copyright. Zia Pueblo, they could have done it without permission, but UNM made sure to get their permission and get their blessing, and before they did those basketball jerseys, and they went through that process, and for football, is there anybody wearing all yellow, man? Is anybody wearing all yellow in football right now?
I don't think you could do all yellow. I do actually really like the Zia on the football helmet. I know that NMSU has done the same thing, but I do like that. I think that's honestly a pretty clean look. I know people are also, I've seen this on social media, kind of interested in maybe bringing back the anthracite with like turquoise accents. I'm not a fan of the anthracite. I will say that. I'm not a fan in particular. But yes, Matt, we can definitely ask. Matt, I did want to ask you too. Do you know what team in the NFL has the longest drought at this point without appearing in a conference championship game?
If you're asking the Cowboy fan, I think the answer must be.
Which is crazy, right? Like, honestly, after the Commanders, like that is honestly crazy to think about. So my condolences to Cowboys fans.
All right. Some follow-up here. All right, so I asked Richie if there was a Lobo football podcast on KRQE or Lobo basketball. He says both, and also they were doing a sit-down. Adam chimed in with, I hope KRQE doesn't talk too much during it like certain beat writers. That is correct. I do talk too much on my Talking Grammar podcast, but I admit it. I actually do talk too much. I was only listening, so I don't know for sure. Okay. Back to the jerseys. Jerseys for 100 football players is a bit more expensive than for 15 basketball players. Football uniforms are double the price to start. That is true. I'll say this, man, and like this came at a time where everybody was IPRing, Inspection of Public Records Act, and everybody was putting in these public records requests all the time for UNM athletics. One of the Bob Davies years, and Frank Mercogliano could help us out with this.
Frank Mercogliano may or may not be watching this show
right now. Right. There was a different jersey at least a different jersey combination, and that includes helmet decals and color, different jersey, all 12 games of the season, and it blew my mind that they were spending that much on jerseys that year. But maybe the Nike deal at the time just had that written in. As such that it wasn't as expensive as I thought, but it was cool to see a different jersey every week. I mean, some people are like, "Oh, I hate those. Don't do that." And then the next week, "Oh, I love those." But you don't know that if you're not changing jerseys, unless you're Penn State, unless you're Notre Dame. No, Notre Dame actually changes their uniforms more than you would think now.
Yeah. I guess Alabama, they don't really change theirs a lot.
Yeah, unless you're a boring Big Ten school that doesn't really change your uniform all that often. I'm trying to take a shot. Changing your uniform is kind of cool, I think, sometimes, and but it does cost money, and maybe your apparel contract is how that happens. So
I think sports branding as a whole probably peaked in like 1986 too. So like honestly, like
what are you basing that? What
I think like
sports branding peaked in 1986.
Like probably, like if we could go back to like how like the Pats wearing those uniforms. With like what the Patriot and all that, the Seahawks.
Quick question, Sean, who was not born in 1986,
not alive in '86. No.
What do you mean if we could go back to 1986 with sports branding? Like,
I'm not saying we go back to '86. I think it probably peaked.
It blows my mind that you're considering all these.
Like, I never wanted like in '86. They weren't. UTEP wasn't doing that god awful digi camo. They weren't doing that with football uniforms. Like, come on. Like, I don't know.
Hey, throwback logos and throwback jerseys are cool, but like the throwback jerseys that you're referring to, like I remember them as just being the jerseys, not the throwback. And so So that makes me feel old, obviously. I will say I don't want to throw it back as far as like the Pittsburgh Steelers do when they basically do the leather helmet throwbacks, where they still have a helmet, but like their jerseys like
No,
big.
yeah, or the Giants throwbacks.
Yeah, sometimes
Richie,
those are
if you have
pretty.
thoughts, I need to hear those too.
Yeah,
College football in the '90s too, great uniforms as well.
all right, let me jumping around again. Jason
Yeah.
Velasquez. If football broke off, what would that mean for other sports? Potentially reverting back to their old conferences. Seems too late at this point. That's my point. Is I think it is too late in a lot of ways, especially with some of these TV deals that do have basketball tied into them financially. But yes, that is the hope of every non-football coach and fan, frankly, is quit letting football make every other sport lose their conference rivalries and have to travel all over the country. So Frank Mercogliano.
So, hey guys, Juwan, as in offensive lineman Juwan Singletary, is back, as is offensive lineman Tevin Shaw. Frank has a roster, but it's not posted. This is why you watch the show, guys. This is why you tune in every week. Not for me to actually answer a question, but for somebody to come in and answer the question for us. So confirmation there, Juwan Singletary is back. And as is Tevin Shaw, that is it's an offensive line, that offensive line room that was devastated after this last season, but it's kind of getting to a pretty good spot. Juwan was for those that don't remember, and I probably should have said this earlier, he was tabbed as the starting center before this last football season, but he suffered a season-ending injury. I don't know exactly what it was before the season started. And then Tevin Shaw also got some reps at left tackle, was a starting left tackle, and then he suffers a season-ending injury as well.
Got another Frank one coming up, but the 5 I see in between, I'm going to go rapid-fire jersey comments. Richie, I love the Zia-themed jerseys. All right. Sean, bring back the anthracite.
As a fellow Sean, I have to disagree, but yes.
The real fake Elton Musk.
Love this.
Wyoming. Let's play Wyoming. And everybody in yellow. They can wear brown pants.
I love this idea, actually. I actually really like this.
Sponsored by French's. Could be the mustard bowl. Adam Garcia. I hated the basketball jerseys with the turquoise state outline.
Which one are these? I don't even.
They just had a state of New Mexico
on the front.
White jerseys with the turquoise outline of New Mexico, and I can't remember if it said Lobos or maybe just their number in the jersey. And now let's get back to Frank. I made the comment earlier that it seemed to have 12 different uniform combinations. It seemed like it'd be expensive. Frank is letting me know, who was certainly the SID at that time and would know, and also in his game notes had uniform combination results, like, when we wore this combination, this was our record and all that kind of good stuff, as Frank has in his game notes. By the way, Frank Mercogliano in game notes every week comes up with basically a 500-page notebook that is a novel a week for Lobo football. And I know Steve Kirkland gives me a hard time sometimes. I hope Frank gives you a hard time. Maybe you read the whole game notes every week.
I do not. And Frank has given me a hard time.
Well, it's hard for me twice a week.
Look at the game notes, and then I go back and look at the game notes.
Yeah, it's hard for me twice a week, even when there's 2 games for basketball, to read the game notes every single time. But yeah, anytime they stick something new in there, it happens to be something I ask about, and it's already in the game notes. So Frank's comment is on the jerseys. We had 4 jerseys: cherry, white, anthracite, and white/turquoise, cherry, silver, and anthracite pants, and white, cherry, and anthracite helmets. So that was the different combinations of all those things. Seemed like they were doing something different, and they were doing different combination every week. But the actual jerseys, they had 4 of them. So there you go. It was a unique year, though. They did an awful lot of them, and so the helmet decals though was great because they had the old school, side logo. Yeah, they had all kinds of different logos, and it was pretty cool. Adam's throwing out everyone aspires to be the Oregon Ducks when it comes to jerseys. In a way that there's some truth to that. I don't think everyone wants the fluorescent highlighter colors that sometimes Oregon uses.
Yeah, They do chrome helmets way too much. That's my one knock with Oregon. I don't hate a lot of the actual uniforms. They just do chrome helmets way too much.
Not a fan of the basically a bunch of like 11 mirrors running around on defense.
Yeah, not a huge fan. And like depending on like when they're playing and what time of day, like that can be it can be tough in the eyes.
I'm so to be 100% honest, I actually wonder how that's allowed. The ones that are basically like mirrors, like you said, the chrome ones, they can at times just get a reflection of even the stadium lights if it's a night game, or in the middle of the day they can get a little glimpse of a reflection that any other color is not going to do on a helmet. So
I'll note that like Oregon's like throwbacks are like great. They should be the primary jerseys, and those are probably used right around the period that I was referencing earlier.
So that period that you were referencing earlier, Reider
Rob, I'm with you. Yeah, let's do it, man. We've all seen the pictures of like Spurrier, Bowden, like those guys.
Again, we've all seen the pictures. Like there's a history book with all these pictures for you youngins out there. We lived it, man. We didn't see the pictures.
I was more like, look at these guys, man. Like they dress way better.
I had a starter 49er jacket growing up.
You had a starter 49er jacket?
Damn right.
You get it through the catalog?
Damn right. I don't remember how I got it, but anyway, yeah, I wore that proudly in Denver after they won Super Bowl 24. They beat the Denver Broncos 55-10, and a week later I was in Denver. My dad lived there, and I wore my 49er jacket proudly in Denver, and nobody there cared that a little kid was wearing a 49er jacket. We got a lot of FUs and take the damn jacket off, kid. So
I think people want to see Jason Eck in a full starter fit in like a cold November game, big starter jacket, starter pants, hat. I think people want that. I think we need to go back. It's not too late. It's not too late to like. It is too late to like probably save like conferences and all that and like go back. But it's not too late to go back to starters.
We're talking like 80s hip hop style, like a little Run DMC action on the sideline.
Yeah, why not?
Putting the coaching staff in members only gear for Sean. Yeah, let's. What about that?
My mom had a members only jacket from like from her. I think it was my mom. It might have been my dad from like her heyday. And I wore that a couple times when I was young. I don't know where that jacket is these days. So I don't really put that much effort into my appearance anymore. So I'll say that.
Richie's back with the giant. The giant jersey throwbacks were only ruined by those dookie stained pants. I don't know if they were dookie stained pants.
They're bad pants.
But if they were red/blue, red or blue, it would have been better on the eyes.
You know who had good like way throwbacks? I thought Illinois had good ones this season with the hand painted leather helmets and the texture. I thought that was
cool. That's right. Yeah, I remember those.
That was cool.
They should actually throw back. They should be required to wear leather helmets one game and see how hard they hit each other then.
I feel like Bielema would be down for that. I feel like he'd like that.
All right, Frank, you asked for it.
Whoa!
Frank is seeking basketball commentator selfies instead of posting the roster. Shots are fired, Frank. You have a roster that is not posted, and yet you have a Bill Raftery selfie, don't you? I don't know if they really got in the way of each other, but there we go. Mercogliano, master of communications and sweet salsa dancer. That was interesting. The salsa, the season of salsa for the Lobos, will be remembered. The only one left, the last man standing.
Yeah, you're right. Oh my God.
The season of salsa, and Frank is the last Lobo standing.
What Lobo football player do you think? Who is our preseason salsa dance nominee? Who do you think out of the players that are right now? I think the answer is like Scott Trey Humphrey, probably. I mean, barring anything crazy. Jackson Eck.
Who's the punter?
Oh, yeah, that is a position we're not entirely sure about right now.
Part of his NIL deal has to be mandatory post-game salsa dancing.
Scott Trey Humphrey. Yeah, maybe we will do a preseason all salsa team. Really get down to that, see what happens there.
I'll bet you we could get Victor Cruz to at least for an interview to help us out with that and hype up his little gimmick.
Did you know Victor Cruz went to UMass?
I don't know why, but yeah, I did know that.
I had no idea until Liam Cohen got hired, and he was like, "Yeah, he was Victor Cruz's quarterback at UMass." It's like, oh, what? I don't know. I was like 7 during like Victor Cruz's best season ever, so I don't know, but.
Do you see Victor Cruz doing salsa in a starter jacket, maybe?
We should be like in these production meetings. Like we could get this. It's here right now. We could take it up to here. I mean, we could do good work.
It's here right now. We could take it to like here.
Here, well, down.
All right. I got another topic that was addressed earlier when I was going over coaching. Pitino may be moving on. Adams asked, "Can UNM ever not be a stepping stone?" I think every fan base kind of says that, and here there's really only one place that there's really only one coach that used basketball wise in a really long time used this as a stepping stone, and that was Steve Alford, and that was after 6 years of winning, and turning the program and leaving it in pretty good condition. It didn't last after he left.
Would you not say that Dave Bliss? I mean, like Baylor was not Baylor like what it is
Dave
today.
Bliss, yeah, but Dave Bliss was a decade. I mean, if you're talking a decade stepping stone, it's hard. Yeah, he left for a better job. It's just so hard to really say UNM's ever been a stepping stone. I'll tell you this: people outside of the Lobo fan base, they don't look at Lobo basketball as a stepping stone job. They see that Fran Fraschilla was fired, Richie McKay was fired, Steve Alford moved on to UCLA after 6 years. Craig Neal was fired. Paul Weir was fired. Richard Pitino, who was fired from Minnesota, is here now and might take another job. But like, there's been far more firings than moving on to a better job out of Lobo basketball.
Yeah. I think the thing right now, can UNM ever not be a stepping stone in a football sense? It just needs to get to a level where people can actually use it to step on to different opportunities and succeed at that point. Bronco is a different point. Bronco has a much longer resume than a lot of guys that get hired here in terms of being a head coach and all that.
I would suggest, and I mean this without any ill will, Lobo football would be a step up if it would be considered a stepping stone job.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody's using Lobo football really of late to go get that next great job. That just hasn't been the history of it recently. So it would be an upgrade if Lobo football becomes considered a stepping stone job.
What do you think is like the true stepping stone football program in the Mountain West?
In the Mountain West, I mean, Fresno State's coaches have gone on to bigger and better things. And yet they've also had guys come back.
Maybe Utah State. Maybe.
Yeah.
I think Utah State, that's the one that kind of comes to my mind. Boise's different.
I mean, Utah State's had guys that went on to Texas Tech, went on to Wisconsin.
Yep.
There was one other, who am I forgetting from Utah State? Had one other guy go on to something pretty good, didn't he? Maybe not. But anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. What are those big jeans called? What are those big jeans from the 90s or whatever?
Oh, I mean, the parachute pants were like what they were called, but like by brand, the big jeans were oh man, somebody's gonna have to send that in.
But Rob, I approve.
Pants more 80s.
This is good stuff.
Late 80s, early 90s, I guess. Way too late for a pack whatever merger at this point. So the pack whatever Mountain West merger, I don't see it happening at this point, especially with legal battles. I just don't see it happening. But I don't see either league, and that includes a Gonzaga, San Diego State-based Pac-12 or whatever it's going to be called. I just don't see either that or the remaining Mountain West basketball conference as being what they think it'll be. Gonzaga's not moving to a power conference by doing this, and they'll get a little more revenue share, I suppose, but I don't think that they're going to get a whole heck of a lot more. I just don't see the Pac-12 as what the Pac-12 schools or see it as becoming. I just don't.
Pac-12 school and Pac-12 fans as well, as they will loudly let you know on Twitter.
What's their media rights deal even supposed to be? They don't. I mean, they don't have one. They, if you ask them, they're certainly hoping for about $15 million. Every school is going to get $15 million a year, which would still be less than the power conferences are giving their schools. But their optimistic outlook is that schools will get $15 million a year for their media rights deal. I think a far more fair guess would be more like $10 million a year, which is still going to be more than what the Mountain West probably is going to be able to distribute. But it's just not going to be the whole worth all the legal fees, headaches, and drama that was created, because I think you could have done a lot of this internally with a merger of some sort, kept all the money together, and built a really good conference with some penalties for those that don't fund the way you want them to fund, and kick them out of the conference if they didn't. They could have done it that way, but chose not to. Chose to blow it up instead. All right, Sean. I don't know. I think it looks like we're probably caught up on all these.
I think we got just about everything. Now we're at the kind of out of order point.
Yeah.
We got an answer in the jeans. Bet you $5. Jenko. It's like JNCO though, right? I think those are coming. I think those are coming back in.
How about Dave Bliss was a time bomb?
Dave Bliss. Another guy I was not around for.
You should wear a leather helmet next week.
I'd rock a leather. Yeah. I might rock a leather helmet, man.
All right, so what's up?
There's a pretty big basketball game this week.
I was gonna say, okay, where are we at in Lobo sports right now? Dave Williams left yesterday. It's gonna hurt the department. Lobo football is going through its off-season roster building time. Before I get to basketball, do we know yet spring dates? Do we know all that?
We don't know yet. No, I don't have a fast and firm answer on that. Frank, if you are still listening and you have spring dates, this would be a great place to break them. But I don't have a fast and firm answer.
All right. Basketball 9-1 at the midway point. So the league has 110 regular season games. 50 of them have been played. This midweek slot of games, including 2 tonight, 3 tomorrow, will technically be the midpoint of the season. 55 games played for the Mountain West. The Lobos are the last team to get their bye. It's not a bye week, but it's either a skip the midweek games or skip the weekend games. And the Lobos are the last team to get theirs. So at 9-1, with easily and obvious, I can take off the leather helmet comment. Easy enough to say that Lobo basketball had the easier half of their schedule on the front half and the toughest part on the back half. But you also don't get through 10 out of 20 games without facing some pretty good teams. And it's, you want to nitpick that the 9-1 team hasn't played anybody, you're just wrong. Because right now, the third place team, they went on a 21-0 run in their gym and were up 17 points with 1:37 left at Colorado State, ended up winning by 8, but they did go on the road and handle the third place team. They blew out the 4th and 5th place team in the pit. They did go on the road and beat the tied for 5th place team in UNLV. So UNM's done some good things, but toughest part of their schedule is still in front of them, and it starts Saturday with Utah State, which is a very good team. Matchup zone's a problem that the Lobos haven't really faced. So they're going to have some issues with the matchup zone. They're going to have some issues with the environment because they have not faced a road crowd like this. Now, St. John's did have a road environment and pretty good at Madison Square Garden. It's a great arena and all that kind of stuff, but it's not going to be what the herd is at the Spectrum on Saturday in Logan, Utah. It's not going to be what the show is in Viejas Arena in San Diego. Those two road environments are going to be pretty tough on the Lobos, as much as the pit is on opposing teams. So the Lobos have their work cut out for them. I don't know what the line obviously will be set at for Saturday, but I imagine it'll be something like 5 points. Utah State by 5 or 6, maybe even. Combination of being at home and being a higher rated team in all the computer rankings. Not all of them, some of them. UNM is higher rated in like Bart Torvik and a couple of the other ones. So the Lobos are playing great. Donovan Dent is, in my mind, the clear-cut player of the year. Chris Murray from the Reno from Nevada Sportsnet today has his midseason player rankings. You can take a look at them if you'd like. He does pick Donovan Dent. Makes a comment that Tyson Degenhart has better stats than Donovan Dent, but he was going to give it to Donovan Dent anyway. Tyson Degenhart absolutely does not have better stats than Donovan Dent. Nobody has better stats than Donovan Dent. Leads the league in scoring and assists. He's in the top 10 in steals and blocks. He's a 6'2" point guard, and then top 10 in blocks. Tyson Degenhart has better rebounding numbers, and is having a really good year. And I'm okay if you consider him as player of the year, but don't tell me he has better stats. I mean, Donovan Dent's having the kind of year that very few players in Mountain West history are going to lead the categories that he's going to lead. I'm not saying he's one of the best or having one of the best seasons in Mountain West history, but it's going to look like that at the end if he does in the second half what he did in the first half, which is lead the league in assists and points. Only one other player has done that, Brandon Heath out of Wyoming in 2009. Brandon Ewing, sorry, not Brandon Heath, Brandon Ewing. And look, he's been really good. I think Nelly Jr. Joseph's having a first-team all-conference kind of season. And so if you have a potential player of the year and a second guy who's a potential first-teamer, you're doing pretty good. The Lobos have a good chance to still be in the hunt, a month from now after they play all these tough road games. But Utah State's pretty damn good too. Ian Martinez and Mason Falslev are two all-conference level guys as well. So it'll be a hell of a game on Saturday. It'll be fun. Don't think the Lobos will go on the road and win it, but they can. And assuming UNLV and Utah State tomorrow goes as planned in Logan, which is Utah State beating UNLV, then it will be a 9-1, first 9-1 game in Logan, Utah on Saturday for first place, starting the second half of Mountain West play. And it'll be fun. And then the Lobos get to return the favor in the pit later in February. So should be good. How much of the Lobo basketball have you been able to watch, Sean?
I watched on Saturday. I caught pretty much the entire second half.
Okay.
I think this season in general, about the same as I was last year, not able to get to every single full game. I watched the Boise game from start to finish a couple weeks ago and all that too. So yeah, I keep my eyes open on it. I mean, as you have to.
Real quick, Jinko.
Just get the jeans in. Get the
Jinko. Yeah, I think Lobo basketball, in a lot of ways, it's hard. Somebody, I'll say, very close to Lobo basketball, not on the coaching staff, but somebody very close to Lobo basketball on Saturday, I had a conversation with, saying it's hard to say this team is better than last year's team or this team is one of the great Lobo teams, just based on record, because the Mountain West this year is so much so far down compared to last year, compared to some of the really good years. And that might be fair. That might be true. I do think the high-end potential for this year's Lobo team, because of roster versatility, is better than last year's. I think last year's defense, the defensive rating for the Lobos last year was so influenced by an extremely good and disruptive point guard. One really, really good defensive player helped skew the numbers quite a bit for the Lobos. This year, it's not reliant on one player. I think there is a team defense right now that is predicated on their size, which they did not have last year. And I do think Lobo basketball's defense is far better overall than last year. I also think they're built to not just get shut down on the perimeter by bigger teams. And I just think this year's team, high end, is better than last year's team, which by the end of last year, I thought was really, really good. So there we are. What do we got here? Little Albuquerque Journal news alert. To wrap up with two more questions popped in. I asked about UNM men's basketball attracting a good coach if Patino leaves on YouTube. Yeah, I didn't see that, and apologize if it did come through to our end. Sometimes I don't know. Anyway,
I think we do this every show, but yeah, some of the questions just don't come in order.
Yeah.
So
I do think Lobo basketball can attract a good coach. I do think, based on the conference situation, the Mountain West was a really unique situation for a long time, in that good proven head coaches could go to the Mountain West as the job after the job, right? You could coach in the Big Ten, Iowa, Minnesota, Richard Pitino, Steve Alford, Michigan, Steve Fisher. You could be what we like to call, when it's in the negative connotation, a retread, but you can be a proven head coach and go to the Mountain West and have a good little career. And I think that's what made the Mountain West unique, was like they hit on a lot of those coaches who had coached before, and it hasn't been a league with a ton of up and coming coaches, young up and comers. It frankly has been a league with a lot of proven coaches. So I think that you can get the attractive assistant now. I think you can get the young and up and comers, but I don't know how many of the retreads you're going to get anymore. Sounds like we're going to wrap up. We got one more. It's our ceiling in terms of metrics for this season for basketball. I mean, I think it'll have to be slow and steady, but with so many road opportunities, including quad 1 and quad 2 opportunities in front of them, the Lobos can still get well into the 30s in the net if they win them all.
How many quad 1 opportunities are left?
3.
3? Okay.
I'll pull it up just to make sure, but I think it's 3. I do know that at Utah State, at San Diego State are both still quad 1 opportunities, and the other one would have to be Boise State. But let me make sure. There is a wonderful, fantastic site, bracketologist.com, has all this information. If you click on Team Sheet View under New Mexico Lobos, it will tell you that the Lobos have 3, as of the current today net rankings, have 3 quad 1 games ahead, which is at Utah State, at San Diego State, and at Boise State. The home Utah State game in February is within strike. The Utah State right now is 32 in the net. If they get up to 30, that would be a quad 1 game even in the pit. Now, the tricky part about that is if you go beat Utah State this weekend, like you want to, in Logan, Utah State's going to drop for having a home loss. And it's going to be harder for that next game to be a quad 1. So that's kind of the slippery slope of conference play, is if you beat good teams, their numbers drop. And it happened just this weekend with the UNLV game. Winning at UNLV dropped their number down a quad ranking. So anyway, there we are. I think that's it. I would take Alfred back if Patino leaves.
I don't think Alfred is leaving Nevada. Maybe not.
Yeah, I don't.
Having a great season this year. He's got a big buyout and all that too.
Yeah, Alfred still owed more than $5 million on his contract. He is also getting a $250,000 retention bonus in April. That said, he probably wants out and would love to come back. And you're not the only one, Matthew, that would like him back. I do not see a 36-year-old athletic director wanting Steve Alford, who likes to run the show and likes to be in charge and doesn't like to be told by an athletic director what to do. I don't think that's a good situation for UNM athletics to bring Steve Alford back.
Do you think Kruger is? I mean, this has to be at UNLV, right? This has to be.
Yeah, I talked to a lot of Las Vegas reporters this weekend about this very thing. You can look at it twofold. One is they're obviously trying to put themselves in position to become a Big 12 school. UNLV is. They just are, and they're spending a ton of money on football to get themselves right. If that money is an untapped sort of fountain that they found, yeah, go get a big name coach. Go replace Kevin Kruger with some big coach, and try and set yourself up to become the next Big 12 school. If you spent all your money and money you don't quite have yet from Pac-12 litigation that's going on, if you spent all that money on football, you might not be able to afford a coaching change right now. You might stick with Kevin Kruger for another year and then sort of make your run at improving the basketball program next year. So that's where I'm at, is I don't know what their money situation is. If they're really paying Dan Mullen based on we know we're getting this much from the Pac-12, it's a little risky. And I don't think you then put yourself at leverage the same kind of risk with basketball and you stick it out another year with Kruger. They are, they're winning. They're not losing. They're not fired. He hasn't really done a fireable offense kind of season yet. They win just a little more than they lose. And it's really hard to fire a coach when he's winning. So there we go. We're going to sign off with this. Richie has one question. Let's sign off with this. Super Bowl picks. Sean, what are your Super Bowl picks? Because mine are the 49ers over the Ravens.
God, I would have loved the Ravens in the bowl, man. I really wanted them to win that Buffalo game. Really wanted them to beat the Chiefs. Just really enjoyed that team all year. I got to go with the Chiefs here, frankly. I think they're 1.5-point favorites right now. It's just so hard to bet against them. And Yeah. And frankly, I don't really have the level of Chiefs fatigue that I think a lot of people do at this point. But the Birds are really fun to watch. I mean, Saquon is just magnificent. And I don't know. They're playing really good football, but I got to go with the Chiefs here.
Saquon alone has me taking the Eagles.
I respect that, and I see that too.
I believe this is true, Joey. I do think Alfredville would actually cut a check to UNM to come back. Guys, thank you for watching. ABQJournal.com. Subscribe if you can. Help local journalism. Help us continue doing cheesy little shows like this and all the wonderful content I'm sure you're reading every day in the pages and online, ABQJournal.com.
Thank you to everybody for tuning in for our not cheesy and deeply serious show in which we hardly crack a smile or a joke. Appreciate everybody for producing our show for us today.
Thanks, guys. I'll hit the